Well, the biggest gun ban in US history has now passed the House, but it actually got so much worse with some of the amendments that they've added to it. And today I'm going to tell you specifically the one that Colorado and their gun grabbers have added that is actually one of the smartest for them, if we can say that, but also one of the worst for people that actually want to utilize their Second Amendment rights. And it's kind of spreading in the western half of the United States. And if you think that this doesn't affect me because I don't live out there, then you are sadly mistaken, because I'm also going to give you a timeline of how quickly things have changed in Colorado. And it doesn't take that long for people to have all of their freedoms, to have basically every single type of firearm taken away from them. This is a really big deal and kind of shows you why there's so many gun owners that are single issue voters, first of all, and how elections really do have some pretty serious consequences. Of course, I want to hear your opinion. Whether you agree or disagree, let me know what you think down below. Let's go and get into it. So Senate Bill 3 is what we're talking about in Colorado. And this essentially started out as a ban on every single pistol, rifle, and shotgun that's ever been made, essentially. I mean, and especially all modern types of firearms. Now, I talked about this bill about a month and a half ago, roughly, whenever it passed the Senate the first time. Now it's passed the House, and it has to go back to the Senate since they've put these amendments in here. And even though I covered the bill extensively in that video, I want to focus mainly on the amendments, but just to kind of summarize it, now you have, if you're a Colorado gun owner, you can own these banned weapons, but that's only once you go through a mandatory 12 or 4-hour class. Basically, you can go through the 4-hour class if you already have a hunter's education safety course. But this also requires you going to your local sheriff, having your fingerprints, background checks, and essentially getting your permit to purchase these firearms, in which they actually have to be renewed, those permits, every 5 years. Now, if you're following along, you see one of the issues already. Funding. Who's going to be running this program? Are there going to be enough spots available for Coloradoans? I think I said that right. I always feel like I get that wrong. I don't know why it just doesn't roll naturally. Anyways, whatever. But are they going to have enough spots in order for you to go into a hunter's safety education course? Or is there going to be enough people to run these courses throughout the state in order for you to then apply for and get your permit? Funding is a huge issue in most states, and when it comes to something like this, where's the guarantee that funding is even going to be available, and or are there going to be people that are willing to do it, because it actually has to go through a sheriff's office? Well, this is the same state that essentially took away millions of dollars from police forces in order to reduce them after what happened in 2020 with George Floyd, and yet they're the same ones now you're dependent upon in order to actually get your permit to purchase. Now, I know they had some kind of vote last year that basically refunds the police department because they seen what was happening in Aurora and other places in Colorado, but still these programs take a lot of money and a lot of manpower in order to serve all of their constituents. Now, this leads to the other issue. Just a couple of years ago, about half of the sheriffs in Colorado opposed red flags, but some of those same sheriffs have now used red flag laws. There was one story, and I don't remember the sheriff's name, but essentially he was opposed to it, then he's used red flag laws. And he said, yeah, there was a guy that was threatening the police department, and that guy pointed a rifle at one of my deputies. So we went to a court in order to remove that guy's weapons. So you're telling me that there was a guy that pointed a rifle at your deputy, and instead of allowing the deputy to protect himself, you made him go to a court in order to remove his guns? That does not sound right to me, right? It's like you're telling this guy essentially, hey, give me just a minute, I need to go to the court real quick so I can remove your guns away from me so you don't hurt me. So there's a potential for abuse here as well. If you have sheriffs that say, you know what, I don't really care about the Constitution, what I care about is my version of the Constitution. Sure, people have the right to bear arms, but this is where you have to be very cautious with people that use the word but after saying, I support the Second Amendment. And so they could essentially say, hey, I am going to delay this process, or hey, we don't have the funding to actually do this. There are so many potentials for abuse in this situation that it's kind of plausible deniability for people exercising their rights. Now, I think you're going to find this hilarious because there's a couple of guns that they do allow that are not restricted in this new bill with their amendments, and I'm going to tell you those, and the single amendment that I think is amongst one of the worst that we've ever seen, probably the worst in the country. But let me just share a quick timeline of how quickly Colorado has gone from a relatively free state to the most restrictive gun state with the biggest gun ban in U.S. history. In 2012, the Aurora movie theater shooting happened. Okay. 2013, that's when they start passing some gun control measures, and one being a magazine restriction. Well, this led to actually 2 senators in Colorado being recalled by its voters. I think that's the first time that ever happened. I want to say it was John Morse and Angela Giron, or Giron, or whatever, it doesn't matter, but they were replaced by 2 Republican senators then. So that's a pretty big swing, and that shows you the state of how most of Coloradans actually felt about gun control. So from 2013, when that measure was introduced, to 2021, there was really nothing there of like significant importance, at least according to Google. But then once you get to 2021, that's where things start picking right back up. This basically was their Biden era of gun control. They created an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. In 2023, they enhanced red flag laws. They upped the minimum age from 18 to 21. They removed a lot of immunity from police officers in 2021. They introduced waiting periods, additional taxes on firearms. So a period of 4 years, they went from relatively free, right? They weren't the freest state in the union by any means when it comes to Second Amendment rights, but they went from relatively free to worse than Illinois and California combined. That is a huge swing. Now, detachable magazines, firearms with more than 10 rounds, semi-auto, everything is now banned. Here's one of the interesting parts. The Ruger Mini 14, not banned. If you're familiar with that gun, you may be thinking, wait, that's kind of like an AR almost. Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is, but it's not as scary looking like an AR. So you're thinking, okay, well, it's got to be the features. Because then you look at some of the other guns. The M1 carbine, not banned. The Browning BAR, when I saw that originally, I was like, wait, are we talking about the World War II BAR? We're not. Okay, this is a new rifle from Browning. But when I first saw it, it kind of caught me off guard. So it's like there's no rhyme or reason to this. And that's because they're not going after features, they're going after the operating system. This is one of the worst parts about this new gun ban. Now, even though the M1 carbine and the Ruger Mini 14, again, I have no clue how they came up with these 2 guns specifically, but whatever. They're going after gas-operated guns. Piston, direct impingement, blowback, doesn't matter. Rifle, pistols, and shotguns, they're going for it all. And now with these amendments, it makes the governor feel a little bit better. And I have no doubt that he's actually going to sign it because these amendments were a part of this package that he thought, hey, and I hope to God this doesn't work, but essentially I believe he thinks that by passing these amendments and giving people a path to buy these guns, that he's not infringing on their rights, he's just making them wait a little bit longer. And of course, we all know the dangers to that as well. When you make people wait that actually need those guns for protection initially right off the rip, essentially what you're doing is creating another victim state, which creates situations just like what we see in Aurora with Tren de Aragua before, fortunately, President Trump kind of stepped in and now is cleaning up a lot of this mess. But their timeline in Colorado and Biden's timeline, they match up perfectly. And now, again, it's like, it's unfortunate, but, these elections have consequences. And, from, I don't know, I looked it up because I was interested, from like early 1900s to 2004, Colorado's been fairly red right? And so they've had a few periods. I think Bill Clinton, that state went to him. FDR back in the 30s, of course. Maybe Jimmy Carter. I don't know. Anyways, they've had a few that they voted on that were Democrat presidents, but typically that state has gone red. But you've seen a change from 2004 onwards, and especially starting in 2021 up until modern day. This is the worst gun ban in history, and when they're not going after the features, the things that make these guns look scary, but they're going after the operating system, what that tells me is that they've actually employed some people that know firearms and know exactly what and how these guns operate, and that's how they're passing this legislation. Now, how much do they know about guns? Again, M1 carbine, Ruger Mini 14, maybe not much, but they know enough to be dangerous, and this truly is dangerous. That's my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one, and as always, holding down.